Hello, remarkable visionaries. Get ready for a story that will ignite your passion and fuel your drive. This is the powerful journey of Victoria Langley, a woman who, after losing everything she'd worked for, didn't just survive, she thrived. Betrayed, knocked down, and told she wasn't enough. Victoria transformed her pain into unstoppable power and proved that the greatest revenge is not seeking payback, but rising higher than ever before. Let's dive into her extraordinary story of resilience, ambition, and triumph. The air in the private dining room of Langley and Associates was thick with the scent of aged whiskey and polished mahogany, the very essence of old money and power. Victoria Langley sat across from her father, Richard Langley, as he tapped the bottom of a legal document with his expensive Mont Blanc pen. Her mother, Eleanor, perched beside him in an elegant silk blouse, her gaze soft but calculating. The papers before her held the fate of her $2 million trust fund, or rather, the fate of losing it. "Just sign here, darling," Richard said, his voice calm, almost dismissive. "Nathan needs this more than you." Victoria stiffened. Her younger brother, Nathan Langley, had barely held a job longer than 3 months, dropped out of university twice, and spent most of his time chasing a failing music career. Yet here she was, a financial strategist at one of London's top investment firms, a Yale graduate, and someone who had spent the last 4 years secretly developing a revolutionary fintech business plan. And still, her parents believed she was less deserving. "I don't understand," Victoria said, keeping her voice steady. "Grandfather set up this trust for both of us. Why does Nathan get everything?" Her mother gave her an almost pitying look. "Darling, you're already successful. You don't need a safety net." Her father leaned back in his chair, his expression firm. "You're responsible, Victoria, too responsible. You'd probably just invest the money in something dull and practical. Nathan, on the other hand, has vision. He dreams big. He takes risks." Victoria's fingers curled under the table. "I take risks," she said carefully. Richard chuckled, shaking his head. "No, you don't. You're calculated. You analyze before you leap. There's nothing wrong with that. But this money would be wasted on you." The words hit her like a slap. Wasted? She had spent years preparing a fintech startup proposal, knowing that with the right capital, she could revolutionize how small businesses manage their finances. She had the plan, the expertise, and the connections. The only thing she didn't have was her family's faith. She thought about telling them, about pulling the proposal from her bag and laying it on the table. Would they even listen? Would they see her ambition, her vision, or would they dismiss her yet again? She already knew the answer. Victoria swallowed down her pride, picked up the pen, and signed away her trust fund. Her father beamed. "That's my girl, always practical." As she handed back the document, Eleanor squeezed her hand. "Nathan will be so grateful. Darling, you're such a wonderful sister." Victoria nodded but said nothing. That night, as she sat alone in her small East London flat, her brother's text lit up her phone. "OMG, Vic, you're the best. Just booked a VIP table to celebrate. Come join." Victoria didn't respond. Instead, she opened her laptop and stared at her business proposal. They thought she was predictable, boring. They thought she'd just accept their decision and move on. Fine, she'd show them exactly what boring could do. Victoria sat on the edge of her small flat's bed, staring at the blank ceiling. The past 24 hours felt surreal, like a slow-motion car crash she couldn't stop. Her parents had stripped her of her trust fund, her financial safety net, and handed it to Nathan, who had likely already burned through a chunk of it on overpriced champagne and designer clothes. She wasn't even angry about the money itself, it was the blatant dismissal of her ambition that stung. A notification lit up her phone. A bank alert. Her father had gone a step further, her accounts were frozen. The credit cards she had through the family's wealth were declined, and even the professional connections she had cultivated through Langley and Associates seemed to be shutting doors on her. Her family had effectively cut her off. The final insult came in the form of a voicemail from Nathan, slurring his words from what was likely the middle of a high-end nightclub. "Vic, you're the best. Seriously, I mean, you weren't really gonna use that money, right? I promise I'll make you proud. Love ya." Victoria clenched her jaw. "No, Nathan, I wasn't going to use that money. I was going to multiply it. She took a deep breath, turned on her laptop, and opened her business proposal. For 4 years, she had been developing Elevate Financial, an AI-driven fintech startup designed to help small businesses manage their finances efficiently. The market research was solid. The projections were ambitious but achievable. She had everything but funding. And now, she had no choice but to find it herself. Her fingers hovered over her phone. There was one person who might help, Jacob Sinclair, her former mentor from Goldman and Barron, the only one who had ever encouraged her to think bigger. She scrolled through her contacts, heart pounding, and hit call. Jacob picked up on the second ring. Victoria? It's been a while. She took a breath and said the words that would change everything. I need your help. Victoria sat in the dimly lit lounge of the Connaught, a private club favored by London's top financiers. The soft murmur of business conversations and the clinking of expensive whiskey glasses filled the air as she waited, gripping her glass of water to steady her nerves. She didn't come from nothing, she knew that, but for the first time in her life, she felt like an outsider looking in. A familiar voice cut through the hum. Jacob Sinclair, her former mentor, approached the table with his usual air of quiet confidence. At 48, a veteran investment strategist, he had long mastered the art of making powerful decisions with precision. He studied Victoria as he sat down, his sharp blue eyes filled with curiosity. You haven't called in years. Victoria, he said, signaling for a drink. When I heard about your family's little arrangement, I figured you'd either disappear or fight back. I'm glad you chose the latter. Victoria exhaled, forcing a small smirk. Would you expect anything less? Jacob chuckled, leaning forward. Tell me what you're really here for. She didn't hesitate. She laid out her vision for Elevate Financial, her fintech startup designed to provide AI-driven financial management solutions for small businesses. She explained how traditional finance models overlooked smaller enterprises and how her platform would democratize financial literacy, helping entrepreneurs succeed without needing generational wealth. Jacob listened without interrupting, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. When she finished, he took a sip of his drink and let the silence stretch. This is ambitious, he finally said. It's smart, but tell me, Victoria, what's driving you? Is this about building something? Or is this just revenge? Victoria didn't flinch. She had already asked herself this question. I won't lie, she admitted. I'm angry. I'm tired of being dismissed. But that's not why I'm here. This idea isn't a reaction, it's something I've been building for years. My father and Nathan's trust fund mess just gave me the final push to do it now. Jacob nodded, seemingly satisfied. Good, because investors don't back vendettas, they back visionaries. Now, tell me why I should introduce you to Henry Wallace. Victoria sat up straighter. Henry Wallace was one of the most respected venture capitalists in the fintech space. If she could get a meeting with him, everything could change. I know my market, she said firmly. I know the technology, I have the research, and I have the strategy. The only thing I don't have is funding. But if I had it, I wouldn't just build another fintech company. I'd change the way small businesses operate. Jacob studied her for a long moment, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a sleek black business card. Wallace is in town for a few days. I'll get you a meeting, he said, sliding the card across the table. But, Victoria, be ready. He doesn't waste time on people who can't prove they belong in the room. Victoria picked up the card, her pulse quickening. I won't waste it, she promised. Victoria took a deep breath and stepped into the Mayfair Club, a prestigious members-only establishment where London's most influential financiers gathered. The air smelled of aged leather and expensive cigars, the very essence of old money and power. At the far end of the room, Henry Wallace sat at a round table, reviewing something on his tablet. The 55-year-old venture capitalist was known for his sharp business instincts, his cold efficiency, and his habit of dismissing people within the first 5 minutes if they didn't impress him. Victoria wasn't here to waste his time. Jacob had warned her. Wallace didn't invest in ideas, he invested in people. If she was going to secure funding for Elevate Financial, she had to prove that she was as relentless as the product she wanted to build. Victoria Langley, Wallace said as she approached. He didn't offer his hand. Jacob speaks highly of you. Let's see if you deserve it. She slid into the seat across from him, placed her tablet on the table, and got straight to the point. Elevate Financial is not just another fintech company. It's a revolution in small business finance. Wallace raised an eyebrow but said nothing. So she continued. She outlined her vision, detailing how Elevate Financial's AI-driven tools would provide real-time financial insights, predictive analytics, and automated business coaching. She backed it up with hard numbers, market potential, projected revenue, and real demand from small business owners. Wallace listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he finally leaned back and folded his arms. The idea is solid, he admitted, but let's address the real issue. He fixed her with a pointed look. You had a $2 million trust fund and gave it away. Why should I believe you're the kind of person who knows how to protect and grow capital? Victoria's pulse quickened, but she didn't falter. She met his gaze head on. That's exactly why you should believe in me, she said. I had everything handed to me, and my family didn't think I'd ever need to fight for something. But they underestimated me. Losing that trust fund didn't break me, it forced me to build something real. Wallace tapped his fingers on the table, considering her words. You're playing the long game. Yes, Victoria said without hesitation. I am, and so are you. You don't invest in quick wins, Mr. Wallace. You invest in people who outthink and outwork their competition. That's what I do. A long silence followed. Then Wallace exhaled and reached for his briefcase. I don't fund passion projects, he said. I fund companies that will change industries. He pulled out a contract and placed it in front of her. $5 million. You've got 6 months to prove you're worth it. Victoria picked up the pen without hesitation. I won't just prove it, she said, signing the contract. I'll redefine the game. Victoria stepped into Elevate Financial's new office in Canary Wharf, a sleek open-concept space buzzing with energy. A year ago, she had been sitting in her tiny flat, watching her family strip away her inheritance like she was an afterthought. Now, she was at the helm of a startup backed by millions, with a team of some of the brightest minds in fintech working toward a singular vision, revolutionizing small business finance. She had handpicked every member of her team, bringing in ex-analysts from Goldman Sachs, software engineers from Barclays, and AI specialists from top fintech firms. These weren't just employees, they were believers, risk-takers, and people who saw what she saw, an industry ripe for disruption. But success didn't come easy. The first 6 months were brutal, technical glitches, missed deadlines, and pushback from skeptical investors. Wallace checked in frequently, never allowing her to get comfortable. Every milestone had to be met with precision, every decision scrutinized. Move too slow, and the competition eats you alive, he had warned. Victoria pushed harder, working 18-hour days, learning to trust her instincts, and making ruthless choices when necessary. Some team members couldn't handle the pressure, but those who stayed became her real family, loyal, driven, and willing to take risks alongside her. By the end of the first year, Elevate Financial's beta launch had exceeded expectations. Over 1,000 small businesses had signed up for the platform, and early data showed profitability rates rising by 27% for businesses using her AI-driven financial tools. Then, the game changer came. A feature in the Financial Times showcasing Elevate as the future of small business finance. Overnight, they had a waiting list of 10,000 businesses eager to join. Victoria stood at the office window that night, looking out over the city. This wasn't just a company, it was a movement. Her family had taken away her safety net, thinking they were teaching her a lesson. Instead, they had set her free. Victoria was deep in a financial strategy meeting when her assistant knocked on the glass door of her office. Your brother is here, she said hesitantly. Victoria glanced up, startled. Nathan? She hadn't spoken to him in nearly a year. He had been too busy burning through her trust fund on extravagant vacations, studio time for his music, and reckless spending sprees. She had seen his life unfold on social media, luxury cars, VIP parties, a new designer watch every month. Now, standing in her office doorway, Nathan looked different. His usual designer outfit was wrinkled, his face pale, dark circles under his eyes. The confidence he had always carried, the entitlement, was gone. Can we talk? His voice was quiet, almost hesitant. Victoria studied him for a moment before nodding. Make it quick. Nathan exhaled shakily and sank into the chair across from her desk. He hesitated before admitting, I messed up. She raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Waiting. The money's gone, he continued, rubbing his temples. Every last penny. The investors I brought in for my label backed out. I can't pay the lease on my studio. I owe people serious money. He finally looked at her. Desperate. I need your help. Vic, please. Victoria leaned back in her chair, folding her arms. Let me get this straight. You spent a year blowing through £2 million. Ignoring every warning. And now that you've hit rock bottom, you expect me to fix it? Nathan flinched but didn't argue. She sighed, shaking her head. That's the difference between us. Nathan, you expected success to come without effort. You thought money would solve everything. I know, he muttered. I was stupid. Victoria softened, just slightly. He had never admitted fault before. I won't give you money, she said firmly, but I will give you advice. You need to restructure your debts. Liquidate what's left, and start over, properly this time. If you're serious, I can connect you with someone who specializes in business recoveries. But that's it, no bailouts. Nathan's face fell, but he nodded slowly. Okay, thank you. As he left, Victoria didn't feel satisfaction, only certainty. This was the difference between them. She had built something real. Nathan had finally learned what it meant to start from scratch. Victoria stood at the head of the massive boardroom in Elevate Financial's headquarters. Her back straight, her expression unreadable as she surveyed the faces around the polished oak table. The air buzzed with anticipation. Across from her, her parents, Richard and Eleanor Langley, sat stiffly, their usual confidence noticeably shaken. They had seen the announcement. Elevate Financial was about to acquire Langley Capital's biggest competitor. For the first time in her life, she held the power in the room. Richard cleared his throat. Victoria, this is an interesting move. His voice remained controlled, but she could hear the strain beneath it. I'd say it's more than interesting, she replied smoothly, clicking the presentation remote. The screen behind her flashed with key data points. Elevate's exponential growth, its market dominance, and now, its latest acquisition. This deal positions Elevate as one of the most powerful fintech firms in the UK. Her father's jaw tightened. We had no idea you were involved with Cambridge Holdings. That was intentional, she said, allowing a small smirk. I prefer to work without interference. Eleanor's hands clenched in her lap. Why didn't you tell us? Victoria exhaled slowly, then met her mother's gaze. Because you never listened. When I had ambitions, you ignored them. When I had a plan, you dismissed it. You believed Nathan's dreams deserved funding. But mine didn't. And now, I've built something bigger than all of you. A tense silence filled the room. The other board members, business leaders, investors, watched with thinly veiled amusement. They knew exactly what was happening. Victoria Langley was proving she had surpassed the very people who had underestimated her. Her father exhaled sharply. I suppose congratulations are in order. His voice was tight, forced. Victoria smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Thank you. I hope you'll find this meeting informative. Now, let's move on to the agenda. She had won, and they knew it. Victoria stood in her corner office, the London skyline stretching out before her, glowing against the evening sky. Just 3 years ago, she had sat in a cramped flat, staring at her business plan, wondering if she had the courage to fight back. Now, she was the CEO of Elevate Financial, leading a company valued at nearly £500 million. Her phone buzzed, a message from Nathan. Just wanted to say thanks. Got my first real investor. Starting over. But this time, I'm doing it right. She allowed a small smile. Maybe he had finally learned. Her success had done more than just prove her family wrong, it had reshaped how they saw her. She had always been the underestimated one. The practical daughter. The one they assumed would play it safe. But they had been wrong. Her mother had called earlier. Her tone hesitant. We misjudged you, Victoria. We should have believed in you. Victoria had accepted the words. But forgiveness wasn't instant. Her parents had only acknowledged her after she no longer needed their approval. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Jacob Sinclair stepped in, grinning. "You ready?" Victoria turned to him, confidence radiating from her. Tonight was the launch of the Elevate Foundation, a new initiative to fund young entrepreneurs who lacked financial privilege. She was giving opportunities to those like her, people who had been dismissed before they even had a chance. As she walked out, a final thought settled in her mind. Her family had taken away her safety net, thinking they were teaching her a lesson. Instead, they had given her the greatest gift of all, the drive to build something on her own terms. And now, they could only watch as she soared beyond their reach. The story of Victoria Langley isn't just one of overcoming obstacles, it's a testament to the extraordinary power of resilience, self-belief, and the often unexpected strength found in being underestimated. When the people she trusted most dismissed her ambitions, Victoria didn't let their rejection define her. Instead, she took their doubt and transformed it into the fuel that drove her to build something greater, not to prove them wrong, but to prove to herself that her potential was limitless. This is a lesson in turning adversity into opportunity and finding strength in moments of vulnerability. Success is rarely about privilege or external approval, it's about determination, a clear vision, and the courage to take risks, even when the road ahead is uncertain. Victoria's journey is a reminder that the best opportunities don't always come wrapped in comfort or accolades. They often arise when we are forced to stand on our own, stripped of everything we thought we needed to succeed. True power, as Victoria's story shows, lies not in seeking validation from others, but in proving to yourself that you are capable of more than you ever imagined. It's about having the confidence to trust your instincts long before anyone else believes in your vision. When you are able to rise, not for the approval of others, but because you know what you can achieve, you tap into an unshakable strength that no rejection can ever take away.